These instruments are used for smoking opium. This substance is an alkaloid, the same as in the bottle we found in the bushes at Kew Gardens. Perfect, Watson. We can begin our experiment. This cabinet is full of chemicals. They are the same as the ones we found in the laboratory at Kew Gardens. That would be enough to perform the most difficult of chemical experiments. A vast amount of opium.
Osmosis and photosynthesis.
This green grand mystic fellow seems rather suspicious, Holmes. What should we do next, Holmes?
Follow my path, and better you will feel.
This green grand mystic fellow seems rather suspicious, Holmes.
I imagine that one of these plants would be capable of releasing a toxic vapor. I need to find out exactly how it could be done. I shall begin now. Watson, if you are at all optimistic to have dinner this evening, then I'd recommend that you put on the gas mask. This plant becomes inactive after being drenched with alkaloid. It appears to open after being soaked with alkaloid. This plant becomes inactive after being drenched with alkaloid. I find the behavior of predators utterly fascinating. It closed again. I believe I saw a small cloud of gas. I wonder what secrets this plant is hiding. Perhaps if we agitate it to a greater extent whilst it is opened, it will reveal a little more. This plant seems to have had no reaction from the caterpillars. It appears to open. It closed again. I believe I saw a small cloud of gas. I wonder what secrets this plant is hiding. Perhaps if we agitate it to a greater extent whilst it is opened, it will reveal a little more. No reaction. No reaction. It appears to have fallen inactive after being disturbed. It appears to open after being soaked with alkaloid. It closed again. I believe I saw a small cloud of gas. I wonder what secrets this plant is hiding. Perhaps if we agitate it to a greater extent whilst it is opened, it will reveal a little more. It closed again. I believe I saw a small cloud of gas. I wonder what secrets this plant is hiding. Perhaps if we agitate it to a greater extent whilst it is opened, it will reveal a little more. No reaction. No reaction. This is a strange and unusual plant. This plant becomes inactive after being drenched with alkaloid. This plant seems to have had no reaction from the caterpillars. This plant seems to have had no reaction from the caterpillars. This plant becomes inactive after being drenched with alkaloid. I find the behavior of predators utterly fascinating. It appears to open after being soaked with alkaloid. I find toxic gas with spores. Extraordinary. The plants would be capable of killing only if they were directly next to the victim and stimulated at precisely the right moment.
Let us take our caterpillars to the Colonial Collection Room. We may see things more clearly there.
It is too early, Watson. Our suspects will be there. Let us investigate Kew Gardens one more time and ask some questions. Can you tell me if you saw Mr. Montague Dunn on the day of his death?
Yes, of course. I met him, and we went to see Albert, his son, at around 9:30. He appeared quite calm.
What were you doing on the morning of the accident?
After paying multiple visits to Albert, I had a little talk with Miss White. Then I returned to my desk to complete some paperwork. Suddenly I observed that Mr. Dunn was not feeling well, so I ran immediately to fetch Albert. I clearly remember that it was around 10:30, for I was late that morning.
Thank you, Mr. Hamish. We shall continue our investigation. Your father's death does seem highly suspicious. What were your movements here on that day?
Suspicious? Well, I was working in the seed house, taking care of Lysa something, or Lear Pontus, or... No, wait. These Latin names. And I spent so many hours trying to memorize them.
Did you see your father that day?
Yes. He came here with Mr. Hamish for his weekly visit. There was nothing unusual about that.
And then?
Nothing. They stepped out to the backyard. It was perhaps 20 minutes before 10 o'clock. Then about 10 minutes later, I saw my father heading for the dry tropics room while Mr. Hamish returned here.
And Mr. Hamish and Miss White, what were they both doing that morning?
Mr. Hamish visited me a couple of times. I also saw him returning from talking with Miss White, and that was at 10 minutes past 10. But then he ran back here to me to tell me that my father was feeling unwell. We hurried across to the water lily room, and I found my father lying dead on the floor. Oh, my God.
Thank you, young man. We shall see you again soon. Seed house. Can you tell me what Mr. Dunn was doing upon the day of his death?
I can, but there is nothing very special to say. I was in the laboratory when I saw Mr. Dunn heading towards me. Tuesday is the day of his weekly visit. It was supposed to be at 9, but he was 10 minutes late, as usual.
And then?
Well, he came in to say good morning. Then I saw him spend 2 or 3 minutes by the plants outside the laboratory. After that, he ran out in the direction of the nursery, where Mr. Hamish was working. He was always in a rush during the inspection, you see. I would pity anyone who stood in his way.
And that was the last time you saw him?
Yes. I stayed in the laboratory until 20 minutes to 11, when I heard the cries of Albert and Mr. Hamish from the large glass house. I joined them as soon as I could, for I knew that something must be very wrong.
What exactly were you doing in the laboratory?
I was recording an experiment for my thesis. I only stopped my work once when Mr. Hamish visited me briefly around 10 o'clock.
You say you were recording an experiment when the tragedy occurred. Might I listen to the roll?
Certainly. Please do. You will find it in the laboratory. It is number 320.
Thank you, miss.
Everyone has gone, Holmes. The way is clear.
No, it wasn't like that. When Montague Dunn was standing close by the plants, the caterpillars were released and caused the deadly spores to activate. Panicking, and likely already half asphyxiated, Montague Dunn started back and knocked over the bust. He rushed to the door, but it was locked. He had to force it open with his shoulder. We already know the outcome. Montague Dunn collapsed and died not far from the pool. Well, it is time to perform our experiment on the ventilation system.